Yo, good with you today. From here we have a new work for you. The story of this manhwa already begins with our protagonist in a city. In a city we can see him, he wore a plush costume, but at the moment our protagonist intended to be doing something. This was confessing to the girl he liked the most. Support for our to have this group behind him. They were filming all this happening. Our big boy then tries his luck because the most he could be getting was a no. Taking off his plush, everyone goes crazy. Then he tries his luck, only that she says she didn't want our protagonist. They met not even a week ago. Besides, she didn't want to be with a loser when she said that it made our downcast. He froze, didn't even move. There, some filmed and teased our protagonist. Only at the moment here someone appears that interrupts that recording, only that everything that was recorded before with our protagonist ended up falling on the internet. He managed to become famous, however he didn't enjoy his fame. Everyone calls him fat, wondering why everyone called him that. He ate a burger while eating it. He received a call that was from that friend of his who saved our protagonist before, but she invited our protagonist to be going to a certain place, but he refuses. He doesn't accept that he is getting close to them in a kind of karaoke. We can see her. She was around several extras here. At the moment it was basically her birthday. She wanted our protagonist to be there, while she was sad about it. On the other hand, we can already see our protagonist disappointed with life. He tried to eat everything he saw in front of him. He loved to eat, but the food brought fats to himself. This made several people around him stay away from him. While he was disappointed with life, he just ate. While eating he accidentally chokes on the burger. He accidentally chokes. Because of this he ended up dying. Closing his eyes he ends up having some memories. And here we find out one thing, that our protagonist alias L. Shank since childhood is judged by some people for being fat. However then he ends up having another extremely sad news. His father got sick, but he had a worse one in the end. He ended up dying too. For our protagonist since childhood liking to eat his mother. People around him always asked him to stop eating so much. They always asked him to take better care of his body. However, he never listened. He just that in his whole life he never managed to feel light because of his obesity. He always felt very heavy, but now everything seemed lighter to him. However, death is not the only thing. At the end of the shift he receives a kind of package from Rai. So when he wins that, he ends up waking up in the end. When he opens his eyes he begins to realize some things. One of them is that he couldn't die. Another was that his body was much weaker. So turning on the light he looks at himself in the mirror. Looking at him he realizes something different about him now. He was no longer fat, and yes, now a thin. He felt like a cicada. At the moment when cicadas reborn they always change color. Our protagonist, who still didn't understand what was happening, is happy, but then he begins to hear a voice. This voice was coming from somewhere. Looking down he sees a system appearing in front of him. He congratulates the boy because he was chosen to be able to become a Hakudo. As a reward now for having received this system he will give our protagonist some things, but our system, known more as Nicholas Angela, will be kind of keeping an eye on our protagonist for a while. But our protagonist at this whole moment wasn't believing in this story of reincarnation. He was quite happy to have returned to life, but he was more surprised to see something in front of you. Thinking that with this, he would become extremely strong, he attempted to use one of his abilities on this table in front of him, thinking he would cut it in half with his hand. He ends up not crushing it, disbelieving that this system was only inducing. The system responds to him saying that at the moment, our little boy is extremely weak. Because he is too weak, he can't do anything, but he could become stronger in the future. However, for that, he will have to do some missions to start the system. Then the system gives our protagonist an ability. At the moment, our protagonist thinks that this ability is extremely powerful. However, while thinking about this, his phone ringing beside him, he starts to hear the voice of his friend telling him about a dangerous situation. Hearing this on the other side, we can already see that extra who was at his birthday party. He wanted to be with her, but she didn't like him, so she wanted to leave, but he didn't want to let go. Grabbing her arm, something crazy starting to happen, but from the background, the door opens. It was our protagonist who kicks the door, entering this place. Everyone there starts to wonder who this guy was. Our Razanya had the same question, but our protagonist, with blood in his eyes, asked them to let her go, walking towards them. They start laughing at our protagonist. He gets close to them, but at the moment, he needs to use one of his abilities. This one is a king-level ability, and this ability makes his opponents become stunned. However, our protagonist is not able to activate it at the moment. But before using this ability, he asks our Razanya to escape from this place. Feeling a little more confident than before, he says this to her, but she doesn't understand very well. but she leaves. Our protagonist then uses the Dragon King's ability. Using this ability, an enormous pressure arises in that place. Both of them end up falling. He is happy with this, but then our protagonist begins to realize something, that his opponent was entering a berserk mode. Getting up, he grabs our protagonist by the collar, thinking that at this moment, he would be screwed. He asks the system for help, but at the moment, our protagonist doesn't have any level to be able to use other abilities. He came here to help our Razanya, but at the moment, he asks for help for her to save him. Saying okay, she leaves him there. He takes a punch to the face, causing him to fall to the ground. There, lying down, he sees that guy walking towards him with the bottle in his hand, but beside him, he sees some breadcrumbs. Because of that, he gains a little bit of XP. Thanks to that, he manages to awaken a new ability. However, he tried to use it, but at first, it didn't work. He was getting closer and closer, but after that happened, our protagonist realizes that his new ability is capable of controlling the guy's mind. This makes that extra reveal an instinct. After that, he notices that there are other extras in the background. He tells that extra to grab the others while something is happening in the background. The door opens, there appears our Razanya. She had sought help, but at the moment, they are astonished to see this weird thing happening here. After this beautiful event, our protagonist leaves. He goes to a fountain, thinking that something would happen with him and our Razanya. But since he couldn't be with her anymore, he ate something before, but that wasn't enough. Thinking about eating something better, he goes to another place. We can already see our protagonist eating there. While eating that, a call appears. It was basically a friend of his. He called to let him know that he was late, but today he is happy because today was payday. Knowing this, the protagonist quickly gets up, happy as can be. He catches a bus, and upon arriving at his workplace, he goes to a certain place to find some things. Not seeing anyone there, not even an employee, he goes to another place. However, upon arriving there, he notices various foods. He only takes a few and nibbles on them. As he eats, he begins to hear a noise from the back. Walking towards the noise, he notices this extra giving a basic humiliation to another. This was basically his friend, but before helping his bar friend, our protagonist receives some hacks. His hack basically allows him to eat freely without choking on any food. His stomach digests a bit faster, but he decides he's going to help his friend. Seeing her calling him fat, he starts to get irritated. Holding something in his hand, he accidentally squeezes it, causing something to fly towards her face, making her a bit angry. At that moment, he thinks his end has come. However, when she looks at our protagonist, she stops and admires the boy's beauty. She then invites our protagonist to go out to eat, which he easily accepts. He came to this place to eat anyway. So, as he came, he invites his friend to eat with them. Leaving with him, she stays behind, still being ignored. She still keeps the idea in mind that she'll get the boy eventually. While eating at the table, she sits beside him. But while they eat, he asks his friend why he's not eating. At the moment, he didn't have any money. His boss didn't want to pay him, so he didn't want to eat anything since he had no money. As he didn't have any, our protagonist invents something, saying there's a sign behind him saying that if he drinks 48 of those cold ones, he wouldn't have to pay anything. Even though it's 48 cold ones, he wouldn't be able to drink them all at once. But our protagonist says it's okay, he'll drink some for his friend. After saying that, he grabs one in his hand and starts drinking. After drinking several, our protagonist realizes that it's not making him drunk. The girl beside him thought our protagonist was drunk, and because of that, he couldn't drink anymore. But our protagonist says he managed to drink what was necessary. She thought he only drank 48. Leaving with his friend, he comes back just to say that he actually drank 50. But before leaving, our protagonist pays a little attention to the old lady. Leaving with his friend, he reveals to him that he was actually the guy from before, with his old friend. But after that beautiful reincarnation, he's now in this skinny body. However, he doesn't reveal to his friend that he got that rock. Instead, he reveals that he underwent some crazy surgeries. But they still have a little problem. That old lady from before has some connections with some gangsters from these regions where our protagonist and his friend work. But he tells his friend not to worry because he set something up against her, to call the police and say that they're using some fake stuff in their store. Getting a call from there, he realizes that the store where they worked had an end. With that result, both of them leave quite happy, but with that outcome came some consequences for those gangsters. In another place, we can already see our protagonist waiting for someone. That someone was actually the one who rejected our protagonist. And as she passes by him, we can see him eating something with his friend. While eating, his friend is worried about something, which is about having money. At the moment, they were fired from their jobs and now they have nothing to buy. But our protagonist has some extra money at the moment, they need it. He pays the monthly fee for his college. To do this, he will use this money while he pays it. He will sort of think about the next way to make some money. This friend of our protagonist at the moment only thought about what his new job would be like while he was thinking about it. Our prota only thought about eating. He ate several things that appeared in front of him. After filling his belly, our prota leaves, but at the moment we can see our protagonist the next day. He was looking for a job, but the place where he was confident he would get the job didn't accept him at the moment. Seeing his money disappearing quickly, not getting any money, he stood still thinking about life. While thinking about life, that person who rejected our protagonist before BR appeared with several extras by her side. Seeing our protagonist, many of them start drooling over the guy. After not noticing the presence of our protagonist, she decided to look at our protagonist. When she looked at him, she went crazy for the kid she rejected before. She goes towards him, and he who was there thinking how he would get some money saw her getting close to him. However, upon seeing her, he started to remember his traumas that she had done to him in the past. She didn't care about what she did to the kid before. She only knew she wanted to go to him. She tried her luck in her mind. She would act tough thinking she would win. She thought our prota would grab her, but she only faced him head on. In her mind, she thought she had failed. Looking up, she tried to use another type of thing to get our protagonist, but with hatred in his eyes, our protagonist easily ignored her with a face like he wanted to beat her up. We see her thinking that this was the first time anyone wanted to reject her. While she was thinking about it, her friend of our protagonist appeared by her side. Seeing his friend, our prota goes to him. She who was holding on to the kid fell to the ground. The others behind filmed everything, but seeing that she failed miserably, she only saw the kid leaving. Thinking that the kid was not ignoring her, she tried her luck and didn't want to be with the guy. But in her head, she heard a buzzing of a somewhat recognized voice. Following the path, he saw that other people appeared in front of him, but his friend decided only to clear the way. This that our protagonist just did left her a little annoyed. While she was there on the ground, our big guy followed the path. Following the path, other extras who were drooling over her surrounded him trying to help her. Realizing that she was two-faced, our protagonist didn't even want to see that anymore. He ate something but also thanked his friend for arriving at a great moment because he managed to get our plate out of there. Ignoring everything that just happened, he, our protagonist, starts talking about the job they couldn't get. He would even ask for help from his family, but our protagonist appears at that moment. He hands a flyer to his friend showing something there. It was basically the job that guy got. He will only need to do a few things in return. Our protagonist will be getting some very useful things for himself, getting several extras by his side, and getting this job. He will have his life made. On another day, we can see our protagonist. He stayed in the background because in front of him, he saw a huge group of extras wanting the same job. After 4 hours, we can see that our protagonist reached the right guy that he might get his job from. So the bar T show that our protagonist just entered. At the beginning, they there ended up giving an objective to each one of them. They will have to eat every weird thing. Their goal is to get points. However, to be able to get some points, the person will have to have some little public. They will only have 30 minutes to do this, but by their side, the winner will have to be in first place. Besides points, he will have to be doing something to win the audience's favor. While staying out, he saw that starting from the background, our protagonist saw several participants doing some weird things to eat. He took some mixtures and added a frog to it, mixing it all together. Our protagonist, who was watching from the sidelines, thought he wouldn't be able to participate in that, but convinced by the desire for that money, he might try. However, shortly after, another participant appeared, who took some kind of gut, put it in one place, and ate it all. But he saw something happening that he wasn't getting any audience at all. Others who ate some bizarre things managed to get a lot of attention, but with his system, he had only one thing, which he thought would attract some audience. He sees another thing happening next, someone with a popsicle in their mouth attracting a lot of viewers. Realizing that at this moment our protagonist would be nothing more than an obstacle in his way, he saw his money disappearing. His system even motivated him to want to give up. However, our motivated protagonist wanted to grab it all. The motivated one wanted to grab that thing that was in his hand, taking a bite. He saw that it was tasty, but he wanted to gain some audience. So he gives a ladylike bite on it, swallowing some toothpicks along. But as he bites it, our protagonist realizes he didn't get any audience, thinking he hadn't achieved anything. He sees some things rising, not just rising, but the audience who watched others came all to our protagonist, realizing he still had a chance of getting it. We see a slight smile forming on the kid's face. His smile here for now remained intact from another location. However, here we see her eating, and beside her, she sees her cats doing their job while eating there. The cats commented that they had never seen such a good view as this one. Seeing our protagonist eating this stuff there, she laughs at one of their comments, in her mind saying that these cats hadn't seen anything yet. And at that moment, she was always on top of everyone, thinking she would stay on top forever while the cats stayed below eating like pigs. She realizes that even though the animals ate like pigs, she still needed those things, but now she wanted to change her food. Now she would be eating a sushi. The audience who watched lined up to see this all at once, but as she was about to do this thing, she starts to realize some things. One of these was that her audience suddenly decreased. Her popularity dropped by 20,000 people, but this didn't decrease over time, it dropped in just 1 minute. At this point, she starts to wonder what happened, trying to understand who her new opponent was that appeared. This, even I can answer. The one who appeared was our big boy who now swallows a very large piece of steak without choking, but the steak wasn't ordinary. He just puts a little honey on it to make it go down smoothly in his throat. Now with honey on it, he puts it down. But however, eating steak for our protagonist was for his or her. But she who still didn't understand the reason for the fame our protagonist gained out of nowhere, but for this question, there was an answer. Our protagonist suddenly decides to bite into that plate, but for the plate not to taste bad, he puts a little honey on it before. With that, he swallows it down effortlessly. As he put the plate inside, his followers started to rise as well, and he noticed this. So, he decides to vomit what he ate there. He then tries to understand if our protagonist was a human or some kind of machine because she had never seen a person like that eat a plate like that. Our protagonist said it was delicious, this thing he just put inside and wanted more. His audience comments that our protagonist was crazy, but our protagonist refutes, saying that no, because the dishes he was devouring there with great pleasure were down. Furthermore, by saying they were down, eating those dishes, another participant ends up shouting, saying that that was impossible because an ordinary person, a common human, wouldn't even eat a plate like that, and he thinks that plate was fake, but however, in his hand, he held a very bizarre thing that he would put everything inside. But not to see this scene, Todd ends up wanting to leave his lid, going to another one. We can see a guy already putting on glasses here. He ends up thinking that our protagonist was crazy, but he was also crazy, but with his crazy experiences of eating bizarre things in life, he ends up thinking that that plate our protagonist put inside was real, and he starts to think that that number 213 flight our protagonist had a quite high determination, one that surpasses his own, but he was doubting himself. He wanted to surpass our protagonist by putting something even more bizarre in his mouth, but however, he thought he couldn't do anything more because that thing he took in the cup before ended up causing some damage to his body. But what our guy put inside was something even worse than that, so this guy ends up admiring our protagonist, and also ends up lying in the end, saying that it wasn't worth continuing while saying that the dish our guy put inside could still be fake. While those giving up, our protagonist from another place became anxious about what was happening. The system starts to say that our boy started to gain a bit more popularity. He wasn't that loser anymore. He had lived a tough life before, but now everything changed. However, for you who once asked how our guy swallowed that dish all at once, it was easy to answer because our guy has a crazy eating ability. That ability allows our boy to swallow anything except what crossed his mind. However, our protagonist's ability would be useless, but he couldn't use it for long, otherwise, some people could discover his true ability, leading our guy down a path that wouldn't be good for him. Furthermore, the effect of eating a dish in the end wouldn't be good for him. But he had half an hour to finish it all to gain more popularity, but he didn't need half an hour, only 15 minutes were enough. So our protagonist thought that everything was going his way now, but however, the audience didn't like the idea of our guy with a dish like that. Both thought our protagonist ate a fake dish until even the figures watching him could eat a fake dish, but he takes another dish and tries to eat it. But people don't believe in our guy anymore. Our guy finds himself falling into a kind of loop where there was no longer a point to reach. Meanwhile, our guy thought he still couldn't reach the top. There was another place. We can already see that there were still a few hours left for this tournament to end, but however, people saw that our protagonist managed to eat a dish, so they wanted to see more. But however, our protagonist didn't eat a dish, something worse than our guy itself. he drank a milkshake in their view. In whose consciousness would someone drink a milkshake or eat meat? They just think of leaving this live. Furthermore, she saw herself as a dog barking at a person as she now thinks about leaving. She ends up getting up at this point, asking them not to leave so soon. She makes up a story there, saying that meat and the milkshake were good for health. She doesn't eat that because she wants to show off in front of the cameras, but because she likes it. She asks them not to be upset with her. After making her whole drama, she gets a bit of an audience, but now she realizes she needs to eat more things or her position, which was in first place, would be taken by someone else. However, she looks at her things or your position that was in first place would be taken by someone else. However, she, looking at her position, is surprised to know that our protagonist was in first, and she was in 8th. While she thought about what she would do to surpass our protagonist from another place, we can already see another extra who there hits the table and begins to wonder who would be this guy who appeared and was now in first place. Now this bald guy who asked who our protagonist was the director of this guy who here ends up not understanding who our protagonist was either, because he was a guy who out of nowhere went from 0 to 10 million followers out of nowhere. He ends up answering to his boss that if by chance our protagonist continues to rise, he will pass that old bald guy there, which the guy didn't like. He thinks he couldn't continue with this game or something good wouldn't happen from then on. So they take a break. Our protagonist, after realizing that he could be leaving to get water, he leaves. Now he thinks he is among the guys who managed to move on to the next phase, but however, the next phase the first 30 participants were eliminated there. A warning is given that they took a 10-minute break after that they would continue while there he thought about what he would do to win first place. The system ends up appearing saying that he did not understand our protagonist. His body was no longer a human body. He thinks our protagonist was crazy, but for that the system asks our protagonist why he likes being in the bathroom so much. Our girl, upon hearing this from the system, responds by saying that there he could relax. But while thinking that this would be his paradise, he ends up hearing a roar. He hears that noise coming from a curious bathroom to know what it was. He ends up approaching. While he approached, the system appeared saying that he could take a little care if by chance he were caught there in the bathroom where he could not enter, he would be arrested and something good would not happen to him. But he told the system to be cool. He would not be caught so easily not approaching the noise. He ends up realizing that someone was putting everything that was inside out, saying that he could not be losing so easily to our protagonist. She will leave her stomach very empty to eat everything in front. While suddenly hearing that noise coming from inside the bathroom, our protagonist thought he was afraid that something strange was happening to him, only that thing there ends up being opened. The door opens and our soda here is surprised to see our pagon there. However, who is surprised is our protagonist, who gets stuck. However, not to be caught, he ends up saying that he heard a noise of something happening, that she was vomiting. He wanted to see and know if she was okay, so in the end he only came here just to be trying to help her. But however, she ends up calling our protagonist a pervert, saying that he should not be here at this point. She would call someone to arrest our pro, but she suddenly recognized our boy from somewhere. But she also saw that our poet almost found out what she was doing. She ends up seeing herself as innocent, saying that she was not feeling bad at all, or she was there in the dust putting everything out in her imagination. She thinks that our protagonist would basically be exposing her all, saying that she cheated to win over others, but our black doesn't understand what she meant. He tries to think a little to answer, but she ends up saying that he could not say anything more. She ends up revealing that yes, she did what our protagonist thought. She put everything she had inside out to stay with the empty stomach. Her goal was to overcome others by doing this trick here that was basically unfair against other people. But she asks one thing of the protagonist couldn't be spreading this to other people. Our PRA ends up saying that inducing vomiting wouldn't be good, a thing that she knows isn't good for health, but someone like her who chose this career needs to have a giant stomach to be able to eat several foods in a short time. Furthermore, if by any chance she didn't want to be doing this, she would end up losing followers in the end, those who were supposed to be her fans by her side forever. So, as she chose this crazy career, she asks our protagonist not to tell anyone that she was doing it there. Our PRA thought that our protagonist would be the kind of guy who would accept anything she told him, but to make sure, our protagonist agrees. However, when she adds a little drama to it, thinking that our protagonist wouldn't fall for it, he ends up saying that she worked hard, but she says that if anyone finds out that she induced vomiting, she won't be able to keep her job forever. To survive in this industry, she has to cheat to outdo others. So, when she says that, our protagonist says he won't say it. To make some cheats to beat the others soon, Then when talking ISO, our protagonist says that he will not speak this to anyone. She then, Apis listening to this coming from our protagonist, ends up drying her last tears and saying that our protagonist was too cool. Our PRA, who managed to fall for her charm, ends up thinking that the world ended up revolving around him while he was there, happy and content with what just happened to him. He ends up seeing her leaving. She even wishes luck to our protagonist. She can say goodbye to our PRA. It's our PRA there for half an hour, telling her even though she was no longer there. Our system already sprouted, saying that that woman was illegible. Our protagonist agrees quite a lot with the system that just said there. Our PRA even said that she was the coolest person and girl he ever met in his whole life. When thinking about saying that she was the coolest girl he found from another place, we can already see her. She walked, but she ends up picking up a cell phone with that in hand. She ends up calling a person saying now that she found a really annoying obstacle there, and she wanted a number 213 to disappear out of nowhere without even anyone knowing. She thought he now didn't want to appear anymore in front of her, while this in the transmission control room in general we can see ours. However, regretting the case, this is how we end this video. But bro, don't be sad about the end of the video, but be happy about what happened. But if you liked it, leave your like. If you want the continuation, leave your comment below, and remember, it's very good that the lazy soul wants everything but nothing reaches.